Just when we think we know what's going on in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, a major curveball was thrown by Akutami Gege. This new information has now become a small piece of evidence that could unmask the truth surrounding Yuji Itadori and his family's connection to Noritoshi Kamo. Until we find out more in the story, this will be sitting on our minds for quite some time. So I want to discuss the possibility of what happened that led to the downfall of a family that's been shrouded in mystery since the very first chapter of the manga. So let's discuss the tragic tale of the Itadori family and their connection to the most evil sorcerer in history. Let's go. Gege reveals something that we knew was going to come one day, but it arrived a lot sooner than later. Yuji's past was briefly explored in chapter 143 with the introductions of Jin and Kaori Itadori. Wasuki, Yuji's grandfather, was also seen in it and warns Jin that while he can live the life he chooses, he must give up on that woman or else he will die. Moments after Wasuki was filled with anger when discussing Jin's wife, that very woman enters the scene, sporting the scar of marking belonging to Noritoshi Kamo, asking the two what they were talking about. I still have the chills just thinking about it every time I've reread this chapter, and it's to me one of the best we've gotten in the story to date, not just for the sake of getting this info at long last, but confirming Okotsu's innocence as well as Megumi's return, and his talk with Yuji to help restore his resolve as the trio prepare for the culling game, an event designed by Noritoshi Kamo that could be on a level similar or even greater than the Shibuya incident. This gave us a snippet into something we all knew was going to be explored someday, but for Gege to give us a peek into Yuji's past was a pretty major deal. The very fact that he was able to recall that dormant memory from his past tells us that there is more to come when we visit it in full detail. But until then, we have to wonder, what exactly happened that led to the destruction of the Itadori family? For one, this tragedy was caused by none other than Noritoshi Kamo. After learning of Kamo's power to swap between bodies from one host to another over the course of 150 years and possibly even longer, it was almost certain that we'd reach a midway point between the original Kamo and Geto Suguru, and the middle ground between those two was in fact Kaori Itadori. It was stated that she had died in the past, but depending on the events until they are told to us by Gege, I'm of the belief that Kamo was able to take control of Kaori's body, which led to this moment of her appearing before her husband and Wasuki. In the official fan book, Gege was asked why didn't the fake Geto heal the stitches on his forehead, to which Gege replied that it's a binding vow and he can use the reverse curse technique to do so. One key detail that needs to be brought up and reminded is that the marks on Kaori's head is far different from the ones we've seen in both Kamo's and Geto's. Instead of stitches, Kaori sports a scar that looks to have healed over a period of time. This could mean one or two things: that Kamo has settled into Kaori long after Yuji was conceived, or by some miracle, Kaori was able to survive being possessed by Kamo. Now we have to remember something that was stated by Choso at the beginning of the Itadori extermination arc. He said to Yuji that your father had stitches on his head. Now that we've seen Kaori sport the same marking on hers, we don't know if this is a mistake on Choso's part or that at some point after Kaori, Kamo had then taken control of Jin. Given the fact that Yuji only barely remembers his father and not his mother, going back to his conversation with Junpei, it fits in line with what Choso said, as it might have been one of the only other things from his past that he remembers. Jin stated that babies remember more than we think, and those who have suffered from very traumatic events in their life tend to seal them behind closed doors in their memories to avoid having to be reminded of those dark moments they once experienced. Considering what we learned from Choso being able to see Yuji's death because of their blood connection, it is very possible that Choso saw into the memories of Yuji's past and was able to get that small detail out of him. One possible idea that ties Yuji and Choso is because Kaori wasn't capable of having children, Kamo, after taking over Kaori, implanted the womb of the mother that gave birth to the cursed womb paintings. It would explain the connection between Yuji and Choso because they were born in the same womb to different mothers, but they both share blood ties to Kamo. I'm not 100% certain that this is the case, because to preserve a womb after 150 years and implant into a mother who had died, who then came back to life later on to give birth to Yuji, seems pretty convoluted. However, it would explain how Yuji was conceived despite Kaori not being able to have kids in the first place. It's a scenario that could hold weight should this be what Gege is going to explain down the road, but for now I'm not putting too much stock into it just yet. Given the reaction Jin had when talking to Wasuki, I'm of the believed that he became aware of everything that happened to Kaori at some point, that she had in fact died but was brought back to life by Kamo, who had taken over her. Only instead, Kaori's resolve was stronger than the prior vessels and was able to take control for herself. However, she grown weaker over time due to the pain inflicted by Kamo's invasion of her body, and thus he was able to take full control once again. Wasuki, who more than likely was a shaman himself, knew of the taboo that was done to Kaori, who was only trying to save his son from walking down a path of no return. Jin refused to give up on his wife and wanted to find a way to free her from the shackles of her possessor. If Wasuki was in fact a shaman, the same can be said for Jin. Given the abnormalities surrounding Yuji's physical strength displayed in the first chapter of the manga, it's almost certain that he got that from his father. This would basically confirm that Jin was a shaman along with Kaori. Jin could have also been similar to Toji and had a heavenly restriction which limited his use of curse energy in exchange for physical strength. Those traits would then continue on within Yuji, who at the time had little to no curse energy of his own before becoming Sukuna's vessel. In the case of Kaori, I would have to speculate that if Yuji's ability to manipulate memories is in fact his innate curse technique rather than his domain expansion, he might have inherited that from his mother, who had once belonged to her. The only problem was that because of his low cursed energy, possibly from having his own heavenly restriction, Yuji was never able to use it. It could have also came at a price, and that because he had inherited while Kaori was taken over by Kamo, there might have been an effect during his birth that would tamper with his memories and make him unaware of his childhood. And it was only after taking in Sukuna and their cursed energy for it to allow Yuji to use his technique unconsciously, while also slowly unraveling his past now that he has Sukuna's cursed energy to open up the locked doors of his childhood. Now onto the tragedy itself. After coming to terms that his wife was beyond saving with no other choice, Jin fought the possessed Kaori in hopes to end her suffering as well as vanquishing Kamo. However, instead, it led to Jin being taken over by Kamo. In a similar fashion to what happened with Toji at the end of his fight with Megumi, instead of taking his own life, Jin had taken his own, as he wanted to prevent his last memories before dying to be of him killing his wife and child. This would have led to Wasuki taking Yuji into his custody and raising him until his passing in the first chapter of the manga. If he was present to see his son and his daughter-in-law die in such a tragedy and have to keep this a secret from Yuji for so long, that must have hurt him deeply for all these years, that his son tried everything he could to keep his family together only to die in the process. Now, I've been thinking about chapter 1 and the final conversation between Wasuki and Yuji. It could also put a new meaning into what Wasuki says to Yuji about being surrounded by people when it's your time to go. Only instead, Wasuki is quoting what his son's final words to Yuji were before he had died, that he wishes for him to find people that will be by his side so that he doesn't feel lonely, so he doesn't end up just like his father. Whenever Yuji remembers his past and realizes his father said that to him in his final moments, it might be what fully cements his resolve as a shaman so that it may never waver again, that he'll face every obstacle in his path with a look of determination. It's something that feels close to what Gege would do, and if that were to be the case, it would be quite emotional to learn that this was how Yuji's family was destroyed. And if Yuji's last memory of his father is in fact seeing him die before his eyes, that is a memory nobody wishes to remember, that they would store it deep into their hearts so it would never be revisited. But once he's seen the world and come to terms with his past, it might be what aids him into becoming the sorcerer he wishes to be remembered as. He realizes that despite his position as a cog in the grand scheme of things, he'll continue to play his role until his final days. This backstory will be explored down the road, and when it does, it may have potential to be one of the highlight stretches of Jujutsu Kaisen. It's been carefully built up since the very start, and with the lock slowly opening towards the truth being revealed, we will know what caused the demise of the Itadori family. And once Yuji has learned of his origins, not only will he have the resolve to face Kamo and settle things with them, but he can now fully realize his family's final wish, to be surrounded by people that care for him when it's his time to go. So those are my thoughts in regards to what happened to the Itadori family and the tragedy that destroyed them. Let me know down in the comments below your own scenario of how things played out. Is Kaori being possessed by Kamo, or is she one of the rare cases to have survived being taken over by Kamo? Do you believe Wasuki's final words were in fact Jin's final message for Yuji? Let me know all of your thoughts about that down in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new here. If you want to be part of the weekly experience when it comes to my coverage of Jujutsu Kaisen week in and week out, subscribe if you haven't already, click on the bell Shandora, stay up to date with everything that goes on the channel. And with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Commodore signing off. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care.
Going crazy, yeah.